Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into a really high-stakes debate, one that's happening all over the world but feels especially urgent in Jamaica right now. We're talking about shipping container homes.
That's right, and it's a topic that, seems to instantly split a room in two.
It really does. On one side, you have people seeing them as this miracle cure, fast, affordable, an answer to a huge housing shortage.
And on the other, you have, a lot of professionals, engineers, builders who just see a dangerous shortcut.
A recipe for a disaster down the line. Rusting boxes, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to slow this conversation down, separate the emotion from the engineering, and find out what the real risk is, according to the experts.
And that's the key. We're going to be looking at the position put forward by chartered builder Dean Jones and some of the critiques that followed, because they force us to see container homes not just as an idea, but as a system, a product.
And if you skip that step, you're not really solving anything.
You're just creating a new problem.
So let's start right there, with that idea of a false binary. Jones argues the whole debate is trapped. Why is it that neither extreme or, the miracle cure or the reckless shortcut really holds up under scrutiny?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding, really. A shipping container is not a house.
Right.
It's a structural component.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high-strength steel box. That's it. So when professionals are cautious, they're not dismissing steel, they're dismissing poor implementation.
So it's like saying concrete is a bad material just because you saw someone pour a terrible foundation once?
That's a perfect analogy. The failure isn't in the material itself, it's in the execution, the lack of standards.
And in Jamaica, that execution has to happen in a pretty unforgiving environment. For you listening, we really have to stress the reality of what any building has to withstand there.
Oh, absolutely. The conversation has to be grounded in Jamaica's environmental reality. I mean, you're dealing with immense design constraints every single day.
You've got intense heat.
Crushing humidity, salt in the air that just eats metal.
And then the big ones, hurricanes and earthquakes.
Right. And that's all before you even start talking about climate change, which is making storms more volatile, rainfall more intense. It's a tough place to build anything to last.
So if the container is just the starting point, what are the absolute non-negotiables? What does it take to turn that steel box into a home that's actually, resilient and dignified?
It really boils down to 5 technical imperatives. First, you need the right specification. You can't just grab any old container that's been sitting in a port.
Some of them carried harsh chemicals, right?
They could have. So, specification first. Then, rigorous treatment against corrosion. We're talking sandblasting, marine-grade coatings, not just a quick slap of paint.
Okay, what's third?
Third is proper insulation, and it has to be thick, non-conductive insulation. If you don't do that, you've essentially built an oven, a heat trap.
Not a home.
Not a home.
Hey.
Fourth is design ventilation and moisture control. That humidity inside a steel box with no airflow. It means condensation and then very quickly mold, a serious health hazard.
And the last one.
Finally, you need structural reinforcement anywhere you cut into the walls for windows or doors.
Yeah.
And it must have proper anchoring to a real foundation to handle those hurricane winds.
Yeah.
You skip on any one of those, and you're not building an asset. You're building a liability.
Okay, so the technical checklist is daunting, but it sounds doable. But the caution from the pros isn't just about technical difficulty, is it? It's rooted in history.
Yes, very much so. The sources draw a really direct parallel to the rush for post-war prefabrication in Britain.
After World War II.
Exactly. There was this desperate, urgent need for housing on a massive scale. And the lesson from that period is that the failures almost never come from the innovation itself. They come from rushed implementation, from political pressure overriding technical standards.
So what happened with those prefab homes? What were the long-term results of cutting corners for speed?
The results were, frankly, generational decay. A lot of those estates, they started to fail within just 15 or 20 years.
That's not long at all for a house.
Not at all. You saw widespread corrosion on the steel elements, chronic moisture problems, insulation that failed completely.
Which means huge heating bills.
Huge bills, and eventually structural fatigue. These places didn't just become unsound, they became symbols of failure. Incredibly expensive to fix, and even more expensive to tear down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that history is what we need to place inside Jamaica's current reality.
That's the crucial link. If a poorly treated steel component failed in the mild, damp climate of Britain,
Yeah.
just imagine what relentless salt air, 90-degree heat and 90% humidity will do to it in the Caribbean.
And that gets to the heart of the dignity argument, doesn't it? It's not just about a roof over someone's head.
Mhm.
If that home is a heat trap, if it makes you sick with mold, if it's rusting away, you haven't solved a crisis. You've just created a new one, a health crisis.
Precisely. And that's why Dean Jones' original piece was so effective. It refused to romanticize the container. It's a tool. It's one possible tool. But if it's misused because of urgency or politics, the outcome is always going to be failure.
So we've laid out the technical side of it, the what. A good container home is possible if you follow the rules. But here's where it gets really interesting.
The how.
Exactly, the how. Because just saying it works if you do it right is, true, but it's also kind of useless. It ignores why bad buildings get built.
This is where we have to zoom out from the material to the system. The real systemic risk here, not just in Jamaica but in many places, isn't the lack of knowledge. It's the uneven application of standards. It's about enforcement.
What does that look like on the ground? When we say weak oversight, what are we really talking about?
We're talking about a whole chain of potential failures. It's the developer who uses less rebar in the concrete because they think the inspector won't show up.
Or won't check properly.
Right. It's the informal builds that skip the permit process entirely. It's the cost cutting that happens when material prices go up halfway through a project. These things happen with block and steel right now.
But hold on, let me just play devil's advocate here for a second. Wouldn't a container, because it's prefabricated, actually be easier to standardize? It's not as dependent on the skill of an individual mason on site.
That's a great point, and that is the promise of prefabrication. It should be easier. The problem, as the sources point out, is that the container itself is just the beginning.
Right.
The real failure points in a tropical environment happen after it's delivered. It's the cutting of the walls, the installation of ventilation, the application of that crucial insulation, the plumbing, the electrical.
The finishing work.
All the finishing work. And if your governance system is already weak, if inspections get skipped, then those same weaknesses just get transferred to the container home. The danger isn't the box itself. It's that the same broken system that allows a bad concrete house to be built will allow a bad container home to be built.
So the chilling takeaway here is that the danger isn't that people will build container homes. It's that they'll build bad ones over and over again at scale because the system for stopping them isn't there.
Which is why the solution has to be systemic. It's not about banning one material. It's about creating clear national guidelines, proper certification pathways, and mandatory inspections for these kinds of structures. The problem isn't theoretical. It's institutional.
Okay, let's pivot to something that's kind of hiding beneath the surface of this whole engineering debate, and that's land use, real estate.
Yes. What's fascinating here is we often talk about these as if they're mobile or temporary.
Like you can just pick it up and move it.
Right. But in reality, especially in the Jamaican context, the moment a family puts a container on a piece of land and hooks up the utilities, it's not temporary anymore. It becomes permanent.
Yeah.
Socially, emotionally, and legally, it becomes a permanent home.
A permanent asset.
An asset, exactly. And once it's permanent, it starts affecting everything around it. Neighboring property values, for one.
Which is a huge issue for existing homeowners.
A massive issue. It puts a strain on infrastructure, water, power, drainage. And it starts to change the planning norms for that entire area. This isn't just a construction conversation. It's a planning and a real estate conversation.
So what does that mean for you, the listener, who might be looking at this as a more affordable path to homeownership?
It means the upfront cost is only part of the story. If that home can't be financed, if it can't be insured, then its initial affordability is almost irrelevant.
Because it's not a real asset in the financial system.
Precisely. We need clarity. How are these structures zoned? How are they valued for property taxes? And the big one, how do banks see them? Will they give you a mortgage on one?
I can imagine the banks being very, very cautious. They need to know that asset is going to last for the 30-year term of the loan.
Of course. And insurance companies need to know it can withstand a Category 4 hurricane. If there's no rigorous certification process, these homes become unmortgageable, uninsurable. They become trapped capital. So the long-term legal and financial thinking has to be just as innovative as the building method itself. Hashtag tag outro.
So what does this all mean? When we boil it all down, what's the ultimate takeaway here for someone trying to get smart on this issue?
I think the sources succeed because they force us to move past that simple good or bad question. They respect the professional caution without just giving in to fear.
They reframe the problem.
They reframe the problem, and they drive home what is, I think, the most profound takeaway from all of this. Standards are everything.
Say more about that.
Materials don't create crises, decisions do. Poor standards will cause a traditional block and steel house to fail in an earthquake just as surely as they'll cause a container home to rust. The focus has to be on governance, not on just one material.
So for you listening, maybe the biggest lesson is that solving a housing crisis isn't about finding some magic bullet material. It's about the hard, unglamorous work of building institutions and enforcing rules.
The technical challenge is solvable. We know how to build a resilient container home. The real test is whether we can govern it.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today.
While we know the engineering specs for a good climate-ready container home are achievable, the real question is about enforcement. If we already struggle to consistently enforce building codes for traditional homes across the entire country, how can we realistically expect to enforce brand new, even more complex standards for this new method?
The question shifts from can we build it to something much harder.
It becomes, can we govern it?
Yeah.
And more importantly, can we afford the generational liability if we fail to? That's what you need to mull over long after this deep dive is complete.